Philadelphia Eagles sign another wide receiver. What does it mean? We'll talk about it here on this episode of Eagles Latest. What's going on, everybody? Cory Nidoh with you, and happy Wednesday. Well, it seems like every week, almost every day, the Eagles are making some type of move to bolster their roster, and they make another one yesterday. They actually made two. We're going to talk about the wide receiver they just brought in Elijah Moore, signing him to a one-year deal. Elijah Moore was a solid wide receiver in college at Ole Miss. He ended up being a second-round pick, 34th overall by the New York Jets back in 2021. However, really hasn't shined in the NFL. Never has had a monster season statistically. His best year was with Cleveland in 2023 when he had 640 yards on 59 catches, had 2 touchdowns. Rookie season, he scored the most touchdowns in any year of his 5-year career with 5 touchdowns with the Jets. That was in 11 games and 6 starts. Last year, he spent some time with Buffalo, appeared in 9 games, made just 2 starts, and had 9 catches for 112 yards with 0 touchdowns. So the Eagles bring in Hollywood Brown. Now they bring Elijah Moore. I don't think Elijah Moore is anything more than a number 4 or 5 wide receiver. Now, I do think this could potentially help the case that A.J. Brown might be back. Seems like this could be a calculated move. If you're unaware, Elijah Moore and A.J. Brown are extremely close. They both went to Ole Miss. AJ was drafted in the second round in 2019, as I mentioned, Elijah in 2021. But when Elijah Moore was on a recruiting trip to Ole Miss, he ended up staying with A.J. Brown, and then they later became roommates. Brooks Kopina of The Athletic has a really good article from a couple of years ago about why it was important that A.J. Brown had Elijah Moore as his roommate, and that's just something that he doesn't allow anybody to do. So we all know AJ's mental struggles and how well documented they have been. He's credited Elijah Moore with helping him through some of his depression and difficult times throughout his life. So maybe the Philadelphia Eagles are thinking, hey, we're going to bring Elijah Moore in to help anchor AJ, and they may very well keep A.J. Brown. I still don't believe that these signings of Hollywood Brown and Elijah Moore mean that A.J. Brown is out the door. I just don't. They are not nearly as good as of a wide receiver as A.J. Brown is. The only way I really see a move being made that indicates A.J. might be leaving is if Philadelphia takes a wide receiver in the first round of this year's draft. And we'll talk about that in just a little bit. But Elijah Moore is now a Philadelphia Eagle. Again, not crazy numbers. He's got only 9 touchdowns in his career, and another wide receiver who kind of primarily lines up in the slot. He's, again, not really an outside target. He's only 5'10", 180 pounds. So again, he's not an alpha wideout. I don't see how he supplants anybody in this depth chart right now. And it certainly, to me, doesn't mean that A.J. Brown is out the door, because Moore right now, I think, could be behind Darius Cooper in the pecking order of the wide receiver room. So more likely a depth signing for Philadelphia. Seems like that's what they've been doing all offseason long. Speaking of another depth signing, they re-signed Big Fred Johnson. The swing tackle will return to Philadelphia for yet another season. Johnson has been really instrumental as a backup for this team. He was hoping to become a starter last offseason. He ended up leaving the Eagles, tested the free agency waters, signed with Jacksonville, and then was never given an opportunity with the Jaguars. And then right before last season, the Eagles were able to get him back in a trade, and then he developed into kind of an average pass protector. Again, didn't grade out all that well last year, but nonetheless, he serves a very important role, and that is that swing tackle for the Eagles. and he will do so for the third consecutive season. He ended up starting in 8 games in place of Lane Johnson after Johnson missed the final 8 games with that foot injury. And in 2026 now, Johnson could play a lot of snaps again if the injury bug bites this offensive line for another season. So Fred Johnson is back, a bigger bodied offensive lineman. Some were wondering how he would fit in the Sean Mannion offense with the way that he wants to kind of run those wide run schemes, those wide angles. But you get a guy that's accustomed to playing in Philadelphia. He's familiar with the roster. He's got friends on the team, and I think it's a good signing. I thought it was an underrated trade when the Eagles were able to get him back last season because of all the injuries they had. Johnson stepped up in a big way and helped fill the void and was respectable in some regards. Again, not great, but he is what he is. He's a backup offensive lineman, and he can kind of carry his own when needed. So Fred Johnson returns to the Philadelphia Eagles, and those are the 2 signings that the team made yesterday as Howie Roseman continuously just picks and chooses some of these role players, these depth guys. Again, no big home run play, no big splash move. There's really none to be had out there. I know everybody's kind of waiting to see if the Eagles will make a trade with the Vikings with Jonathan Grenard, who's probably the best remaining edge rusher that is publicly made available, but that has yet to be made, and we'll see what else the Eagles do as they kind of slowly but surely piece together a roster that I think last year lacked some depth, and we'll see where they land when it comes to April when the draft comes up. Speaking of April and the NFL draft, I tweeted out yesterday at Cory_Nidoh that Field Yates of ESPN did his first 2 rounds of a mock draft, and boy, did it generate some buzz. He has the Eagles taking Omar Cooper Jr., the wide receiver out of Indiana, with the number 23 overall pick. Now, what I was mentioning during the Elijah Moore segment was this is the only way I could really envision a potential A.J. Brown trade before June 1st, is that they take a wide receiver in the first round. I kind of have a hard time believing that they will, just because offensive line is such a need. They have Marcus Epps as a safety, but I don't think he's the starting safety they want going into this upcoming season. You still need an edge rusher. I think there are some more needs. However, if they know that A.J. Brown is going to be traded, maybe they've got some type of handshake deal with New England or whomever post June 1, then this makes more sense. But again, I have a hard time believing that they're going to use a wide receiver as the number 23 overall pick unless that is the case. So Omar Cooper Jr., according to Field Yates' mock draft, would land at the Philadelphia Eagles. Again, we talked about him a bunch on the show. Don't really want to beat a dead horse. If you don't know him, go take a look. I mean, obviously had a great season with Indiana, who went undefeated, won the national championship, played with Mendoza, who is more than likely going to be the consensus number 1 overall pick this year. And he's solid. He's got some good moves. He's shifty. He is a yak monster, if you will, yards after catch, somebody that the Eagles could really utilize in this expected new offense under Sean Mannion. But again, I just don't know if that's the direction they are going to go. I think there's a lot of different moving pieces that would have to fall in place, or maybe they are already in place right now. But that's the second mock draft I've seen where Cooper Jr.'s landing at the Eagles. We talked yesterday how Mekhi Lemon would potentially be a landing spot for the Eagles at 23 as well. And some think Lemon might be a better receiver than Cooper Jr., depending on who you speak with. So interesting tidbit there. Again, it seems like things are kind of slowing down. I saw a ridiculous poll by one of the radio stations here in the city saying, would you be mad if the Eagles are stuck with A.J. Brown? I don't know how you're stuck with a 1,000-yard receiver for 4 straight years. I don't know how you're stuck with a wide receiver who is arguably the best in franchise history. Yeah, did he not perform well in the playoff game? Absolutely, but neither did the entire offense in that second half against the 49ers. Some of the things he does frustrating, absolutely, but the teammates really enjoy having A.J. Brown in the locker room. I've been in the locker room multiple times. You don't get that sense that they are fed up with his antics that some fans and some media are trying to portray as they need some talking points here during the offseason. So we'll see what happens. The Eagles sign Elijah Moore. They re-sign Fred Johnson as they continue to make marginal additions to the 2026 roster. Again, I don't think Moore is going to be anything more than a wide receiver 4 or 5. Probably won't see a whole lot of targets if I'm being honest with you, but nonetheless, it's a depth piece. God forbid if one of these guys goes down. So that will just about do it for this episode of Eagles Latest. Really appreciate the support. It's been a lot of fun to talk about the Birds so far this week, and we're going to continue to move along here this week. Who knows? We'll see if the Eagles provide us with some more news. It certainly seems like every single day or every other day they're making a signing or there's a report that's coming out. But I do think that the Eagles will be pretty well off moving forward. I know it's kind of a slow and quiet offseason. They haven't really made that big move yet. I don't think it's a great offseason by any means, but I also don't think that this roster is totally in shambles where some might think it is. So, as always, thanks so much for tuning in. Please drop a comment. Been enjoying reading the comments and getting back to some of the viewers. Looking to do some more of that here today as well. And most importantly, hit that subscribe button. We're so close to 300 subscribers. Would really appreciate to get to that round even number by the end of the week. That would be fantastic. So as always, thanks so much for tuning in. I'll be back with you tomorrow to talk more Birds. Have a great day, everybody, and enjoy your week.